Okay, hello everyone. Today we're going to talk a little about choosing fonts for your web page. So web fonts and web safe fonts and how you put them on. So first off, this is a list of web safe fonts. This includes fonts that are basically just on any computer by default. So when you use them on a web page, it takes a lot less time for the web page. Well, not necessarily a lot, but it will take less time for the web page to load because it doesn't have to load a new font that wasn't already there. So that's an advantage of a web safe font. And that's what it is basically every computer already has it, so there's no huge load time to wait for all the fonts to find on the internet. The problem is a lot of these fonts, they basically all look very similar to each other. There's not a huge difference. There's some personality seen in the fonts, such as Impact or Courier, but for the most part, there's not a whole ton of personality seen, and they pretty much all look the same as each other. So that's a drawback. But for text like articles or stuff like that, it's really good to know that these fonts can be used because that will cut down the loading time for your guest on your website. Other fonts are known as web fonts. They may not be found on someone's computer, but you can have them, you can link to the location of the font on the web and it will load onto the website. So it takes a little bit longer to load than a web safe font, but unless you're using tons and tons and tons of web fonts all on top of each other on your page, it shouldn't take that much longer. So, but fonts like this can add personality to your page. And you can find them online on websites such as Google Web Fonts or fontscroll.com. That's how you can find free ones that are free to use legally and from the text from the artist of the font. Some you can find you'll have to buy. And so if you want to use free ones, you go here and it has instructions on how to use it just as links. You can also download the font to use on your computer, but you don't need to. You can just use it on your web page if you want. The drawback to these types of fonts is sometimes they have different spacing in between the letters, such as kind of this one. For this particular font, because it's really sketchy, and if you zoom in, you'd be able to see that. I think that kind of adds to it instead of taking away from it. But there are sort of imperfections and flaws in these types of fonts, and you can sort of see them sometimes, especially in the ones that are free that you don't have to buy. So use them, but pay attention to what it looks like before you just haphazardly spray them all over your page. And that is the difference between web fonts and web safe fonts, basically just how you use them. These types of fonts have to be linked in, and these types of fonts are already on people's computers, so they don't have to be loaded or linked onto the page. They're already there. So that's basically how fonts on web pages work. Thanks.